Artists, it's Miss Jillian here, and I am here to talk to you a little bit. I'm just going to slide this right over here, scrap paper, about how to start your final draft this week. So you can see that I have my scratch paper right here ready to go, my scratching tool, and I have my photograph of my tornado. You might have something different, but this is going to work the same regardless of what your natural disaster is. So I have my regular photo, which is in black and white, and then I have my photo in negative, and you can see that this photo and this photo have their light and dark values exactly opposite. So you can see that every place in this picture where it's dark is light on this side, and everything that's light on this picture is dark on this side. And the reason for that is if we were drawing this normally, so if we were going to be taking, and this is a scrap paper I had left over from our Kings and Queens of DP project, I'm going to draw on the back of it just to kind of try to save some paper. So if we were just going to do this project just as a drawing of our natural disaster on a white piece of paper, we would have to take our pencil, and because our paper is white, we would have to add all of the different various shades of blacks and grays and whites in here with our pencil. So we're adding color, even though it is gray and white, so we're adding it. Let me try it with my marker just so it can show up. It's not super showing up with. So now I'm making this paper darker. I'm adding into it. I'm adding the tones. I'm just doing this really fast. That are darker. So I'm taking this piece of paper that's white and I'm adding the darker tones to it. Right? And I'm making my mark with my drawing tool. Right? But we are actually doing this a little bit in reverse this time, because our paper that we're working on is actually already has our darkest value on here. It's already black, right? So the reason that we look at our picture in negative instead of in positive is the black marks on this picture are showing where we're going to be making our mark with our tool. But the difference between the marker right here, our Sharpie or our pencil or something else, if we're drawing with color on another piece of paper, is we're adding color to it, we're adding value to it. With our scratch tool, we're taking it away. So we're removing this dark layer of our darkest value. And so we want to, but we're still like making marks, which is kind of a little bit confusing. So we're still gonna be drawing kind of right here. So we're still adding marks to our paper, but instead of our marks adding color, we're taking that value away. So let me show you a little bit more about what I mean. So if we have the white paper matches this photo, let's put these a little bit closer together. I'm gonna fold over the edge of this so that everything fits on my table. So if I'm drawing on white paper with any other color tool, I'm turning the value from light and I'm making it darker by adding color, even though I added my mark. And if I'm scratching it, I'm removing my value or my color. I'm making it lighter by making my mark. So, for example, you'll notice right here in our regular photo, our positive photo, the funnel of the tornado has, let me see, has kind of a shadowy part right here, and then it has a highlight around the edge right here, and that's the brightest part of the tornado because it's illuminated by this lightning flash right there, that bolt of lightning. So for this illustration, we're going to be working with just lines. So I'm going to cross hatch this in to add value. So kind of block this off. So we want this to stay white because it's the brightest part of the funnel for right now. And I would add marks in the part where there's the shadow. And then I could add more to make it darker or light as dark. Or as light or as dark as I wanted it to be. This one's probably, this part's a little bit lighter than like the darkest areas, which are up here at the top of the paper and down here where the trees are. So the darker I want a space to be, the more lines I would add and the closer together. And the lighter a place is, the less lines I would draw. So this is the lightest part of the funnel, but it's not 100% the same color white as the edge of our paper. And also we have a teeny tiny little highlight over here. So I'm just gonna kind of add another line over there. So the more lines I add, the darker it gets. And then over here it's lighter, but it's not quite as light. So I'm just gonna add some lines to show that it's a little bit lighter, right? So that would be how I would do this in if we were just drawing a photo or our illustration just using lines. Now, because we're drawing on our rainbow scratch paper, all of the lightest parts of our photograph are going to become rainbow color. So you can see that this is the place that has the least amount of marks on the paper, right? Because if I remove all of this on my black sheet of paper, my artwork is going to look like this photograph, which is opposite of how this looks. So we're going to add our marks where you would see the darkest part in this photograph. So you can see, remember again in a negative, the darkest part of the photo is going to be the lightest part. I know it's confusing, so let me just go ahead and model for you what that's going to look like. So we're going to kind of compare. This is the lightest part of the tornado, right? Right here, it shows up as the darkest. That's because I'm going to add more marks right along here on my rainbow scratch paper. So that's showing me that I need to add a lot of marks right there to make it as light as I can. And I'm going to try to just lightly sketch out. And this is just me modeling. If you would like to, before you get started, sketch your image out using a pencil so that it's as close to realistic as possible for the shapes. That's a great idea. Just be really careful because the point of the, I'm pressing really lightly, the point of the pencil might accidentally scratch off some of the black surface. So I'm just doing a light sketch, making sure my shape is right. This comes out a little bit further, so it's a little bit wider at the top. It's a little wider right here, a little more narrow down here. And we have that. So see, I accidentally scratched right there. So, like we talked about on a white piece of paper, the more you add your mark, the darker it gets. So I would like for you to use this as a reference guide to show you you're still going to be making most of your marks in the area where the black is on here. So, but because we're removing this black layer, that part's actually going to end up looking lighter like it does in this photograph over here. So that's telling me that I need to not make a lot of marks right here because there aren't a lot of marks in this picture or in this part of our tornado in our negative photo, but there are a lot of marks right here, right here, right here, right here. So we're going to fill that space up with marks. First, I'm going to kind of sketch that area out. really lightly because I can't erase with this. So really lightly. Then you can see I have this little sliver of a black line right here on the other side of my tornado funnel, and you can see that right there. And then we talked a little bit about that right there. So we're going to have a really thin line on this side. And we're just going to use line patterns because we can't, that's going to help us add value since our work is going to be black and rainbow. So we have to use lines to help us make an area look lighter and darker. So we got a little bit, there we go. So just that really thin. I'm taking my time. And I'm cleaning off the tip of my tool a lot. And if you want, like I did, to do a practice drawing before you get started on your final draft, you can. So if you want to do exactly like what I'm doing, but instead of drawing it on your scratch paper first, you want to practice drawing your image but in the negative. So let me find another piece of white paper. Actually, let's see if I have one. We'll use the back of this paper. So if you want to plan out where your marks are going to go, you could do that just referencing this photograph so you can see exactly how the marks that you make on this paper are going to transfer to this. So if we have our funnel, we have it kind of over here too. This is a little bit narrower, so make sure you use pencil in case you need to adjust the edge of the trees. So we know that on here, the lightest part is where this darkest part is in our photograph. So we're gonna know that we have to make a lot of marks on this side of our tornado to make that the highlight on our, and I know the shape isn't perfect, but I wanna show you really quickly what to do. So the more lines I add, the lighter that part is going to look like on my scratch art. So if you want to plan it out by drawing your negative before you get started on that, that's great practice so that you know what your marks are going to look like. So we have this lightning space right here, and this kind of arches into that. It comes down. This side comes down, up and around, and then we have this line right there that goes up and around. So all this stuff on here is going to be dark because again we already have our black layer on there, our darkest value, and then on here we're showing where our lightest value is going to be. So we're creating our lightest value on our rainbow sketch sheet. We have kind of loops back over, and we have these little scratch lines coming out. So again, I'm using cross hatching, which is diagonal lines that intersect, and I really love using cross hatching to create value. So, and this is just as dark as this, so it's going to be the lightest, another lighter part of our rainbow. So I'm kind of planning it out. I know the trees are right here. There's a little bit of like a thin line at the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to start out drawing lines just like Elizabeth Catlett did when she was planning her sharecropper print. She did a practice before she started on her final product because practice always helps us improve our craft. I'm going to start with big lines that kind of space across from each other. And I'm moving a little bit faster on this, my practice, and you can use the draft sheet that's in your packet, or you can use scratch paper, scrap paper, not scratch paper, to test it out and see. So does this look as dark as this needs to be? Not quite yet. But it's always easier to start with a small amount of lines, see how it looks, and add more if you need, because remember, we can't erase over here. All right, so now I kind of know that that's what my lines are gonna look like, but we want it to look super nice and neat over here, so I'm gonna move a lot more slowly on my And the first thing I'm going to do when I start my final, so you draw this out, I'm going to just get my shapes right, and then I can go back in and add the lines later. So this is what we're going to be working on for the next couple weeks. So right now I'm just getting my basic shapes down. And I know that this is all going to be really light because this is the lightning bolt. You can see I'm kind of brushing off the dust that's created when we remove the coating on top of the rainbow. Trying really carefully to match the shapes I see around this area up here. That's what I'm looking at right now. So this area that I drew, and I'm going to match my lines from right here to right here. I'm going to go back in, and now because this part's going to be the lightest part, I can go back in, and luckily I can. Take away a little bit more because this line's not perfectly straight. Right, and then where the lightning hits right here, there's like that dark line. So I know that I need to make that same line with my tool. Like this. Now, so this is going to be my lightest spot, so it's going to have the most amount of lines. But if you look at this photo, you can still see, and I turned the photo into crosshatch too, so I could also see like where my lines were going to be. So you can see that I still have like a little bit of crosshatching I'll have to do in here. But for right now, we're gonna just block out our big shapes, and we'll go back in and start adding lines like this. Go up, and there's a little cloud that comes out, like a little variation in the cloud that comes out right here. That's light, and then we also have, the edge of the tornado comes up and goes around like that too. So we have that two different sections. So this comes up. Kind of like that. So that, if you remember when we look at our original photograph, is that little bit of whiteness, that little bit of lightness right here. A little bit of a lighter gray. So we have that little bit of lightness right here. I'm going to try to straighten this line out so it looks nice and neat. And it's really hard to see in this one, so I'm going to keep this one right here, but I do have just like a smidge of a tree line over here, and I'm going to just really lightly, super lightly scratch that out, super lightly, because we don't want it to be too bright over here because it's not that bright on the photograph. Okay, and then I also notice there's a little bit of a variation between my darkest value, the gray right here, or the black right here, and then my gray right there. So I'm just gonna so lightly, kind of block that off too. That kind of comes down to here. All right, so it doesn't look exactly like our illustration or like our photo yet, but we're gonna keep adding lines for this week. We just wanna make sure that we get the big stuff blocked out first. All right, friends, and we'll be back next week with more feedback and discussing what else we need to add to get our scratch art illustration to look more like a rainbow-fied version of this. All right, guys, I will see you next week. I'm so excited to see your in-progress final draft, and also please make sure you practice drawing your expert natural disaster using your negative photograph. All right, friends, I will see you later. I'm so excited to see your work. Bye.